The moment I knew I was done playing nice, when my keycard beeped red like a damn siren at 7:59 a.m. on a Monday. Not yellow, not malfunctioning. Red, denied. I tried it again, slower this time, like maybe the universe just needed a second. Same red flash. Same metallic clunk of a lock that didn't give a single damn that I'd opened that door 5 days a week for the last 5 years. The building's security guy, Mark, who once asked me for resume tips for his nephew, wouldn't meet my eyes. He tapped at his screen, gave me a shrug that said don't shoot the messenger, and mumbled you'll need to talk to internal. Internal. I didn't need a briefing. I already knew. Ava. Right on cue, the elevator doors opened behind me with the subtle grace of a migraine. Out strutted Ava Stone in 6-inch heels and a blazer 2 sizes too smug, flanked by 2 HR reps like she was Taylor Swift on tour. She walked past me, like I was the intern holding her iced latte, and paused only to twist the knife. Oh, Emma, she purred, dangling a jangling ring of keys like some cartoon villain. I hope you didn't have anything important in the office. I've already feng shuied the place. Vibes were all wrong, my office, my chair, my whiteboard, my filing cabinet where I literally kept the original drafts of the Series B grant agreements, most of which I wrote while Ava was busy filming TikToks on the company dime. And now she'd reclaimed it, like a colonial settler discovering land that already had a mailbox. Next to her, Brent, my coworker and apparently now her lapdog, stood shifting awkwardly from foot to foot, the same Brent who used to forward me Ava's strategy decks for editing because she couldn't figure out how bullet points worked. He held out a manila envelope toward me, not even meeting my eyes. They said you should review this with HR. It's not official. Yet, just a temporary restructuring. You know, I didn't say a word. I just looked at the keys in Ava's hand, the ones I used to carry. The same set I'd once used to lock up at midnight during launch week when half the office had already gone home and Ava had bailed for a wellness retreat in Chalum. And in that moment, I saw it all. The lies, the lazy power plays, the smug little power vacuum Ava planned to fill by stealing everything I built and dressing it up in pink post-its and buzzwords. But I didn't snap. I didn't scream or cry or slap that smirk off her filler-plumped face. I just smiled, nodded once, and walked away. Funny thing, when your dignity's been set on fire, you don't feel the heat. You just feel clean. Hollowed out, sure, but clean. And if you've ever had a moment like that, a moment where you swallow the rage, pocket the humiliation, and walk out not because you lost, but because you know what's coming next, hit that subscribe and drop a like. Trust me, you're going to want to see where this goes. Because what Ava and the whole nepotistic clown car didn't realize is that while they were busy redecorating my office, I'd been quietly laying landmines under the foundation. And Ava, she just stepped on one. They didn't fire me. That would have been too honest, too direct. Instead, they slow-bled me like a deer caught in a corporate snare, hoping I'd just wander off and die somewhere behind a WeWork paywall. By Tuesday, Ava's shiny new title was on the company site. Head of Strategy. No announcement. No town hall. Just a quiet update buried between a blog post about our new espresso machine and a culture feature with photos of her grinning like she invented ChatGPT, head of strategy. From a woman who once tried to solve a user churn problem by suggesting we just email everyone more positive vibes. She couldn't differentiate between user retention and water retention, but sure, give her the title. My projects disappeared one by one. First, the cap table model, then the grant documentation, then the revised investor pitch deck I'd been fine-tuning for 2 months, pulled and reassigned to Ava's new strategic brand vision team, which, based on what I heard from engineering, consisted of Brent, 2 unpaid interns, and a whiteboard covered in glitter pen doodles of buzzwords like synergy and mindshare. No one told me directly. They never do. Cowards don't swing axes, they just pull rugs. HR stopped replying to my emails entirely. My Slack account still technically existed, but my channels were empty, like someone had Control plus Alt plus deleted me from the digital record. I messaged IT, got a ticket number, and then silence. When I tried to DM our HR lead, it auto-responded with, currently out of office. Please contact Ava Stone for urgent matters. I stared at that message like it had personally insulted my bloodline. And still, I didn't confront anyone. Not Ava, not the CEO, not HR. Not even Brent, who had once cried in the break room because I helped him rewrite a performance review and no one ever looked out for him like that. Guess what, Brent? Turns out some people do bite the hand that feeds. They just wait until someone hands them a better chew toy. But the silence gave me space. Space to remember, to plan. One night 2 months ago, I sat alone in that same office Ava now called hers, with a cold cup of jasmine tea and the Series B grant agreement glowing on my second monitor. I had just gotten off a frustrating call with our legal team about vague investor demands, and I was combing the docs for leverage. Something, anything, that gave me a firewall. That's when I found Clause 6.2 was nestled in a subsection titled Key Officer Space Continuity, buried beneath jargon about operational integrity and physical headquarters oversight. But I read every word, twice. Paraphrased, it said this: if the officer occupying the designated suite, me, was removed, reassigned, or had their role materially altered without board notice and legal documentation, the grant, and by extension, the Series B funding, would be void pending review. Voided. Not paused, not revised, voided. I remember sitting back in my chair, heartbeat so loud I could hear it echo in the HVAC vent. That clause wasn't just about me, it was the tripwire, and they had no clue. I highlighted it, saved it, printed a hard copy, emailed myself a timestamped PDF. Then I locked the drawer and went home without saying a word. Now, watching Ava swan around the office in my seat, using my budget, delegating my staff while I sat in slack limbo, it wasn't rage I felt anymore, it was clarity. They hadn't taken my power, they just relocated it. And that clause, that little 6.2 footnote in a sea of legal sludge, that was the detonator. All I had to do was decide when to push the button. I made the call from my car, still parked outside the building like some corporate ghost haunting the loading dock. I had a half-eaten protein bar on the passenger seat, my coffee had gone cold, and my hands didn't shake once as I dialed. File it, I told Marcy, my attorney. Occupancy violation. Include the timestamp, the keycard denial, and Ava's, let's call it her enthusiastic office takeover. Marcy didn't ask questions. She just exhaled and said, understood. You know what this triggers, right? I did. It wasn't just a HR misstep or a bruised ego. Clause 6.2 wasn't a suggestion. It was legal concrete. The second they stripped me of access to that suite, my designated suite, they'd yanked the linchpin holding the entire grant eligibility together. A grant they'd already promised to investors, a Series B round they'd already pre-spent in their heads, if not their actual balance sheet. Marcy filed it, time-stamped, digital and hard copy. One to the investor legal team, one to our internal counsel, just for good measure. And then we waited. That same afternoon, the CEO summoned a company-wide meeting. He stood up in front of a Zoom backdrop showing our latest product dashboard, trying to look calm. His tie was crooked, and for once, Ava wasn't perched beside him like a demonic cheerleader. I want to address some recent transitions, he said, voice sticky with the fake warmth of someone reading a hostage letter. This is all part of a temporary restructuring. Ava will be stepping into a more visible role as we position ourselves for the next phase of growth. Emma remains a valued member of our leadership team. I was watching the meeting from the tiny co-working pod I'd rented that morning, cheap carpet, worse coffee, and a desk that smelled faintly of old microwave popcorn. But I had internet. I had receipts. And most importantly, I had time. Ava's camera was off the whole meeting, but her Slack messages were lighting up. She was in my team channel now, posting updates, tagging engineers, linking to Google Docs she hadn't written. A digital infestation. I didn't respond, not once. Later that evening, an email pinged from a partner at our lead investor firm. Subject line, Urgent Clarification Officer Continuity Compliance. The body was short, cold, and surgical. Dear Emma, in preparation for the Series B disbursement, we are confirming the current continuity of Dymetra's key leadership roles as outlined in our previous agreement. Please confirm whether your position and designated suite remain consistent with our legal understanding as of contract signing. If there have been any material changes, we ask to be informed immediately. Regards, Jonathan Gray, Principal, Helix Ventures. I reread it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand, but because I wanted to savor it. It was the sound of the match being struck. But I didn't answer, not yet. Because the old Emma, the one who always plugged the leaks, always showed up with the fix, always paperclipped Ava's messes into something resembling strategy, she might have responded. She might have rushed in to assure Jonathan everything was business as usual and that the office shuffle was a minor internal adjustment. But that Emma, she'd been locked out. This Emma knew better. This Emma had already filed the violation. This Emma had the clause, the timestamps, and the silence. Let them scramble. Let them sweat through strategy meetings and investor check-ins, pretending they hadn't just amputated the legal limb their funding depended on. I wouldn't lift a finger. They wanted chaos? Fine. Let's see how they handle it without their compliance officer. The irony of renting a co-working desk directly across the street from the office that spat me out like a chicken bone wasn't lost on me. It was petty, sure, but it was also poetic. Same skyline view, same neighborhood coffee, just enough distance for plausible deniability, and just close enough to watch the implosion unfold in real time. I picked a corner pod on the second floor of a startup hub that smelled like ambition and desperation in equal measure. My desk had one of those dry erase calendars already stained from past battles, and I left it that way. I didn't need clean slates. Needed ammo. The moment my laptop booted, I slipped into a rhythm I hadn't used since college finals, head down, headphones in, fingers flying. But I wasn't writing code or decks anymore. I was mining. Every Slack thread, every forwarded email, every per my last message breadcrumb. I wanted timelines. I wanted contradictions. I wanted Ava's incompetence archived in multiple file formats. First, I downloaded the updated org chart Ava had posted, titled Dymetra Vision 2.0, like she was some kind of messiah sent to pivot us into financial ruin. My name? Gone. No senior director of operational strategy. No executive officer. Nothing but a ghosted LinkedIn profile with a smile that now felt like a mugshot. Then came the logs. Slack messages where Ava rewrote product timelines without consulting engineering. A calendar invite labeled emergency budget planning no Emma. A long, embarrassing thread where she asked if we could just fudge some expense categories to look more lean for Series B optics. That one got screenshotted and double encrypted faster than you can say SEC subpoena. By noon, I had folders color-coded and time-stamped. Access denial, org changes, compliance risks, a growing graveyard of digital receipts. It wasn't about revenge, not anymore. It was about control. At 2:17 p.m., DM popped up from Claire, one of the last engineers I still respected at Dimitra. The message was simple. You were right about her, they're scrambling. 5 words. And just like that, the last flicker of sadness I'd been nursing got extinguished like a candle snuffed under a boot heel. Because I had been right. About Ava's incompetence. About the CEO's cowardice. About the fragility of systems built on nepotism and vibe checks instead of qualifications and contracts. The sadness gave way to something colder, sharper, not anger, not vengeance, precision. I wasn't just collecting documents, I was building a case, not a lawsuit, something far worse for them, proof. Proof that the grant was tied to me. Proof they violated it knowingly. Proof they were too arrogant to notice the pin pulled from the grenade in Ava's acrylic-nailed hand. They thought I was drifting. Instead, I was circling. And every minute I sat in that co-working chair, surrounded by strangers with noise-canceling headphones and dreams of seed funding, I became more untouchable, more dangerous. Across the street, the lights in my old office flickered on. Ava's silhouette moved behind the glass. She was probably planning a team huddle to realign strategic visions or pitch a rebrand using buzzwords she scraped off Pinterest. I just smiled. She could keep the office. I had the claws. By midweek, the vultures had started circling. Odimetra's exec team still thought they were pigeons. Helix Ventures, our lead investor and the would-be source of the $60 million Series B infusion, sent over a casual little pre-funding compliance checklist. That's what the email subject said anyway, like it was just housekeeping. But buried in the attachments were landmines, requests for verified org charts, executive role definitions, documentation on leadership continuity, and building occupancy logs. It was the legal equivalent of showing up to brunch with a subpoena in a gift bag. Word was, the CEO tried to brush it off. Said we were undergoing a light reorg to streamline synergy. That our leadership team was dynamic and evolving, which is rich coming from a man whose idea of leadership was letting his niece run wild like a caffeinated raccoon with a budget. He had no idea that the thing evolving was his company's eligibility for funding, and that the person pulling the strings wasn't even in the building anymore. Because while he was bluffing his way through investor calls and sweating into his overpriced ergonomic desk chair, I was sitting across from Jonathan Gray, Helix's principal partner, the man who signed the original term sheet, the one who called me operationally irreplaceable in an email last fall, even though he CC'd the CEO and made it sound like a compliment for the whole team. We met at a boutique cafe downtown, one of those startup-adjacent joints where the coffee is $7 and the chairs are suspiciously uncomfortable to keep you from staying too long. He was already seated when I arrived, scrolling through his phone with the same casual menace Ava probably thought she had mastered. He looked up and smiled like we were old friends, even though we'd only met in boardrooms and budget reviews. Emma, I had a feeling I'd hear from you. I didn't smile. I just sat down and pulled a single sheet of paper from my leather folder. No preamble, no speeches, just paper. Clause 6.2, highlighted, bolded, crystal clear, and stapled to it, a copy of the building's digital log from Monday morning, showing my access revoked and Ava's badge registering entry at 8:12 a.m. into a suite still legally designated as mine. Jonathan didn't flinch. Just took it, read it, and exhaled through his nose like a man who just found mold under the floorboards of a house he was about to buy. He tapped the paper once. They're not aware this has been triggered. They're not even aware it exists, I said. That wasn't entirely true. The CEO had seen the clause when we first drafted the grant agreement, but he'd skimmed it like most men skim warning labels and prenups. Legal had flagged it, I had insisted on it, and everyone nodded without understanding a single thing it actually meant. Jonathan nodded slowly. And you haven't spoken publicly about this yet? I haven't spoken at all. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. My silence was the show, because this wasn't revenge show. This was corporate chess, and I was 10 moves ahead with a queen they thought they'd sacrificed. He tucked the paper into his folder and finished his espresso in one slow, thoughtful sip. I appreciate the clarity, he said. Then he stood, adjusted his cufflinks, and walked out without shaking my hand. I sat there a little longer, staring at the empty espresso cup across from me like it held Ava's future. Back at Dimitra, the CEO was probably spinning up some LinkedIn post about navigating operational realignments or whatever word salad HR fed him to make this week look intentional. Let him post, let him spin. I had handed the detonator to the one man who didn't need to press it himself. He just had to let go. And when he did, oh, it wouldn't be a bang. It would be the clean, clinical sound of funding evaporating mid-wire transfer. They got the email at 8:42 a.m. on Thursday. Subject: Immediate compliance, review Helix Ventures Series B disbursement, 5 paragraphs. 3 flagged action items. 1 devastating line: we are pausing disbursement of the Series B grant pending review of Clause 6.2, key officer space continuity. From what I heard later, the CEO read it 3 times and called an emergency meeting with legal and finance and used the phrase minor hiccup like it was a broken printer and not a loaded gun pointed at the heart of the company. The CFO? Oh, he didn't take it so gently. Rumor has it he burst into the boardroom holding a printout of the clause in one hand and a building access log in the other, barking. Why the hell am I just finding out about a funding trigger clause tied to office seating charts? Legal counsel mumbled something about oversight. Someone else tried to blame IT. HR pretended they'd never heard the term key officer before, which was bold considering I personally walked them through that clause during our onboarding audits. And Ava, from what I was told, completely lost her grip on reality. It's just an office, she reportedly screamed. She can have IT back. I don't even like the view. She shoved a chair. A literal chair. Like this was a scene from the Real Housewives of Delaware Tech. The CEO tried to calm her down, told her it was a misunderstanding, that things could be massaged. We'll clean it up, he said. We just need to show continuity. But the damage was already done. Helix had been quiet for weeks, letting the company fumble around in the illusion of progress. But now they were engaged, actively, visibly engaged. Emails, phone calls, follow-ups. The phrase material breach started getting tossed around like confetti. Meanwhile, I sat 2 floors up in the co-working space, sipping burnt chai from a paper cup, and watching their building from across the street. I could see the reflection of the boardroom in the adjacent skyscraper's mirrored glass, tiny silhouettes pacing like lab rats. My name started popping back up in Slack, according to a mole who still had eyes inside. People were asking where I went, asking if I was okay, asking who had replaced me on grant compliance because, surprise, nobody had. Someone even floated a theory that I was secretly poached by a competitor and had sabotaged the office on my way out. I wish I could say I felt something: rage, triumph, satisfaction. But the truth, I felt nothing. Not cold, not numb, not cruel, just still. Like I'd been underwater for months and now my head was finally above the surface. I could breathe. I could see, let them panic. Let them search for me in inboxes and meeting invites and building keycard logs. They didn't realize they were looking in the wrong place because I wasn't in the office anymore. I was the office, the clause, the continuity, the grant. The one fixed point around which their entire funding orbit spun, and they'd ejected me like expired yogurt, unaware the label said "do not remove." They made their mess. Let them drown in it. I'd already packed my bags for something bigger, something cleaner, something mine. At 8:30 sharp Friday morning, I hit send. No drama, no subject line in all caps. Just a single email to Jonathan Gray at Helix Ventures with a quiet, unassuming subject. Affidavit Clause 6.2 incident attached. A PDF notarized the night before at some strip mall UPS store, where the notary barely glanced at the contents before stamping it. She didn't ask questions, just signed, sealed, and handed it back with a bored good luck. If only she knew. The document laid it all out in clean, weaponized legalese. I had not voluntarily vacated my designated executive suite. My keycard access had been revoked without notice or board review. My title had been removed from internal documents. My responsibilities had been redistributed without written consent. And most importantly, suite had been reassigned to a non-officer, Ava Stone, whose actions constituted a breach of the key officer continuity clause in the Series B grant agreement. I attached the timestamp badge logs just for clarity, and then for the final nail I included the Slack file. MP4 format, 38 seconds long. Ava's voice, unmistakably giddy and shrill, echoing from a screen-recorded Zoom chat with her inner circle. Honestly, taking Emma's kingdom was the move. No offense, but she had main character energy with NPC charisma. I am the face now. In the background, Brent laughed too hard, like a man who didn't realize he was sitting inside a house that was already on fire. I'd saved that one for last, because it wasn't just incriminating, it was humiliating. And humiliation, when packaged properly, doesn't just damage reputations. It rots them from the inside out. Jonathan replied within 20 minutes, received. Acknowledged, will be in contact shortly. Short, surgical, no thank you, no we're sorry. But I didn't need apologies, I just needed acknowledgement. A legal record that the truth had been placed squarely in their hands and with it the power to press the button. By 9 a.m., I closed my laptop and took my tea out onto the tiny terrace of the co-working space. A rusted metal bistro chair. Pigeon poop in the corner. The exact opposite of luxury. When you're holding the fuse in the match, everything tastes like champagne. I imagined the inboxes lighting up across Dimitra like a string of firecrackers. Legal blinking at the affidavit like it had been summoned by a vengeful ghost. CFO yelling, when did this get notarized? HR pretending they hadn't seen the Slack message, even though it had been posted in a public channel with 12 emoji reactions. And Ava with her manicure clicking against a glass desk, rereading her own words with dawning horror, taking Emma's kingdom cute. She didn't realize I had never wanted a kingdom. I wanted control, and now I had it, silently, legally, elegantly. The ball was no longer in their court. It was on the investor's table, sitting next to a steaming espresso and a stack of revised term sheets, one of which no longer had the CEO's name on it. The only sound left was the ticking of the clock. Tick, tick, tick. At exactly 9:01 a.m., the call came in. The CEO was already in the boardroom, flanked by legal, the CFO, and Ava, who, according to a later play-by-play from my inside source, Claire, bless her chaos-loving soul, was still insisting this whole thing was a weird HR glitch. She'd even printed out the old floor plan, highlighting her name in pink Sharpie with a heart over the I in head of strategy. When the assistant knocked and said the lead investor was on the line, no one breathed. Not even the intern pouring cold brew. The call was piped through speaker, every syllable echoing off the mahogany walls like gospel from Mount Doom. Jonathan Gray didn't bother with pleasantries, didn't ask how the team was doing, didn't compliment the slide deck someone had surely wasted 6 hours polishing that morning. He just began, calm and cold like a winter surgeon prepping for an amputation. Per our contractual review, we have confirmed a breach of Clause 6.2, key officer continuity, resulting from the reassignment of the executive suite previously occupied by Emma Walsh. You could almost hear the blood drain from the room. He continued, undeterred. As of Monday morning, Miss Walsh's access was revoked. Her office was reassigned without legal notice or board approval. The replacement party, Miss Ava Stone, is not listed as a designated officer under the Series B grant agreement. A pause and then the dagger. So I'll ask plainly, your daughter just voided the Series B grant by occupying the key officer suite. Correct, for beat, there was nothing, just silence. The kind that says this isn't a conversation, it's a confirmation of death. Then, the CEO's voice, ragged and cracking. We're under the impression that the clause wasn't active. We believed he didn't finish. Because from the other end of the line came Helix's in-house counsel, clearly waiting for this exact moment. Clause 6.2 was flagged in Redline Review, marked as essential to grant conditions. It is active, it is enforceable, and it has been violated. Ava's voice cut through the room like a buzzsaw dipped in glitter and ego. This is bullshit. I didn't mean to void anything. It's just an office. I can move back, okay? Tell them I'll move back. The CFO slapped the table. We can't unbreach a grant clause, Ava, but she wasn't listening. She was still ranting, voice climbing toward hysteria. She did this on purpose. Emma's a vindictive bitch. She set me up. And somewhere, buried in that tantrum, was the only true sentence Ava had spoken all year. Back on the call, Jonathan gave no reaction. Just a quiet sigh. In the final cut, Helix Ventures is placing the Series B disbursement on indefinite hold, pending full legal audit. You'll receive formal notice by end of day. Click. Call ended. Claire later told me no one spoke for a solid minute, just stared at the speaker like it might take the words back if they waited long enough. The CEO rubbed his temples and muttered, "How did this happen?" Legal flipped the contract around so he could see the clause again. The CFO stood up and left the room, whispering to himself, "We're screwed. We are so screwed." Ava was still yelling. No one was listening, and me? I was at the same cafe where I'd handed Jonathan that one little page, sipping tea, watching the emails roll in like aftershocks. I didn't speak. I didn't post. I didn't brag, because when it's done right, silence is louder than any revenge speech. And mine was deafening. 3 days later, I signed my name in blue ink at the bottom of a stack of Crispin Corporation documents. 6 copies, each with my name at the top, not the bottom. Emma Walsh, founder and CEO, no interim. No acting. No niece with a vague title lurking in the hallway. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Not like a burden, like it meant something. Like for once, the weight of what I'd built had a name and a door it belonged to. I knew office was on the 12th floor of a building across town. Floor-ceiling windows, exposed brick. No inspirational posters, no beanbags, no fake culture murals screaming innovate. In Comic Sans, just light, space, and my own damn keycard. The nameplate on the door was already up. Walsh Strategic, simple. Clean, undeniably mine. Helix backed it, of course, not just with funding, but with full-stack support, legal, operations, branding. It didn't ask for blood this time, just my vision and a clean slate. The spin-out would carry over the core IP from Dimetra, the stuff I'd architected anyway. Ava could keep her Canva decks and buzzwords. I had the code base and the architecture, and now the equity structure to match. They let me pick my own team. I called Claire first, then 2 engineers who'd been quietly rooting for me from day one. They didn't hesitate, said yes before I even finished the offer. We moved fast. Within 48 hours, I had furniture being delivered, Slack channels humming, and my name on the front page of a new press release. Former Dimetra exec launches AI governance venture with backing from Helix. The press loved the angle, so did investors. Clean break, smart pivot, female founder with receipts. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. The caller ID read, CEO Dimetra. I let it ring. No voicemail. He didn't call again. There was nothing left to say. Later that week, I met Jonathan at the new office. He walked in, shook my hand without the formal stiffness he'd used before, and looked around with a small, satisfied nod. Feels right, he said, taking in the space. Better acoustics, I replied. No screaming in this one. He smirked, just a flicker of it, and handed me a fresh copy of our new agreement. Tighter terms, full control. I flipped through it, page by page. No hidden clauses, no traps, just clarity. And then, as I reached for my pen, he said it. No theatrics, no podium, just a quiet sentence that landed like a gavel. Next time, we start with your name on the term sheet. I signed, no fanfare, no audience. Just the soft scratch of ink on paper and the faint hum of a company being born on my terms. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't rage. It was leverage, used precisely, patiently, and with purpose, and it felt like evolution. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.